Hi guys, and welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host Indira, and today I'm joined by Cambridge Uni student and GB runner Bea Wood. In this episode, we're going to get into how you can balance the competing demands of academics and running. Bea offers insight into her journey of taking academics to the top and also running to the highest level. She gives some tips, advice and reflections on how she's done this. I think this episode will be very relatable to a lot of student athletes. And before we get into it, if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcast, please be sure to rate and review the podcast if you've been enjoying it. It really helps. Okay, let's get into it. Okay, so Bea, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. Glad to hear it. And did you session this morning?
Yep, I did. And then followed that with a gym session because I'm off to London later. So.
Oh, exciting. Anything fun in London?
My dad's birthday, so not especially fun. I think it will be a bit of a stale sandwiches eating in the park and then a concert. So it's not going to be the best, but I'm doing it because he's keen. So
yeah, well, it's the people that count. I'm sure he'll love having you there. Okay, and so can you introduce yourself as a runner?
I've been running for about 6-7 years now. I focus on the kind of 1500, 3K, probably more 5K though ultimately.
Yeah.
And also cross country.
Yeah. Okay, nice. And so how did you get into running?
I kind of started fairly young. I think I was lucky with 2012 Olympics because it kind of came at a time when I was starting to kind of, you're starting to kind of become your own person, like year 4 or 5. And I was very inspired by Jessica Ennis, and I was quite competitive with the boys at school. I was kind of a sprinter / long jumper for like 2-3 years. And then I joined the Quad Kids where we lived in Dorset in about year 6. And then when we moved to Salisbury, which was end of year 6, start of year 7, I joined the local athletics club. And from there, it was middle distance only. And yeah, I became quite serious quite quickly.
Okay, yeah, no, that's really interesting to hear. Was there anything in particular that inspired you from Jess Ennis Hill, I guess?
I think London 2012, it's like in its entirety, it was pretty phenomenal. We were quite lucky. We got to see a few kind of random things. We saw the road cycling, some sailing, some Paralympics. And I think, I don't know, I just felt like those were the golden days of Britain, people were happy. Like it all went a bit downhill after that. But yeah, I think the whole kind of festival nature of it, like the opening ceremony, closing ceremony, like it was just kind of this massive work of art. And there was so much involved. Like we knew people in the opening ceremony, and it was like this kind of big celebration of sport. It was just, I think everyone kind of felt it.
Yeah, for sure. It definitely was. 2012 was a pretty good year as well.
Yeah.
Okay, and you mentioned they're getting, pretty serious pretty quick, and a quick look at your power of 10 would show that to make a lot of sense, considering, your first year of running, you came out with a sub-5 1500, top 3 in your first English schools. How, what was that process like? Was it, quite quick after starting that you found you're quite good at it, or, talk us through that?
Yeah, it's hard to know. It's hard to look back and try to like figure out exactly what it was. But I've always treated running kind of the same way. Like, I don't think I've ever had some kind of shift where I suddenly started taking it seriously. I guess I was just, I think the competitive spirit was just in me from a young age. And I don't know if that's always necessarily like been the most productive thing, because I think maybe it would have been better had no one cares how good you are when you're under 13, but equally at the time I just really loved it. And I still do, like that hasn't gone. So I think I was just very driven, very competitive.
Yeah.
I didn't massively enjoy school, so I suppose it's kind of like a life outside of school that would kind of give me confidence, I suppose. So yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And I think some of the stuff you described there's, quite common amongst a fair few other athletes as well. And, you mentioned they're not enjoying school so much, but you're now a Cambridge Uni student. So I guess something must have changed from that point of view.
I think, I suppose I always like the academic bit of school.
Yeah.
And that's, I suppose I kind of think they're often, like, if you're driven at sport, you can be quite driven academically as well. So I don't think they're kind of mutually exclusive. They're not like polarities in any way. I think they kind of fuel each other.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, and so, you saw a lot of success at a young age. You mentioned there your attitude not really changing at any point, but what was it like, experiencing high levels of success? I mean, you took titles and wins at, English schools, inter-counties, the national quite consistently, over your years.
I think it made me determined and motivated in other areas, not just in running, because I think I also kind of garnered a sense of like pressure that maybe hasn't necessarily like ever gone, but not really pressure externally, but kind of pressure I put on myself. But then again, also in a way, it was good that I started at a young age, because I say young, like I wasn't crazily young, I was 13 or something. Because I think like the longer you do something, the more effectively you learn to handle such pressure. And I always think like an example is superstition, because runners are kind of famously like silly about things. So they'll be like, no, I have to wear these socks on race day, I have to do my hair this way. And I feel like when you're young, like 13ish, you take that so seriously, and you're like, if I see a magpie on my run, it's bad luck, kind of thing. But I think everyone finds that as you stop being able to control things like that, like you're traveling to race, and there are just more things that can be thrown at you, you have to kind of mature. So I think it's similar with pressure. You kind of just have to kind of see things in a perspective. And also at the end of the day, like, it is only running. I know, it's a big thing and we hype it up, and when you're surrounded with other runners, it seems like such a kind of important, crucial, life-defining thing. But actually the welfare officers we have in our running club are very good at being like, spend time with non-runners, because no one actually cares what your 5k PB is in real life. So yeah.
Yeah, no, that's so true. It's really great to hear that you've got that kind of perspective on the whole situation. So would you say that, you've got quite a good running life balance overall?
I think so. I think I'm lucky with my degree in that there aren't many contact hours. So it's pretty much self-taught. Like, the more reading you do, the better you're going to be at English. And so that means there's a lot of flexibility. So yeah. And also running isn't a sport that kind of takes up hours. You can do something quite good in an hour if you have to. So I think although the academic, like the work here is hard, I think I'm lucky with my degree, but also I suppose school was almost, I don't want to say harder because it wasn't, but in terms of time, because you have to be there for 6 hours or whatever, it's like, I don't any longer have that kind of requirement. If I did a different subject, I would. So again, it is dependent. But.
Yeah, for sure. So you're saying that potentially the nature of your course allows you to have a better kind of running life balance than you would have potentially in another course. Yeah, that's really interesting. And, following on from what you're saying about maybe school being a lot more constraining in terms of you being able to manage your time, would you say that now, having gone to uni, you're finding a better life running balance than you were at school?
I think probably, yeah. Like, I don't think I ever struggled at school with it, but I suppose it was just not ideal. I remember it was horrible. Year 11, I'd have like double chemistry, double physics. Although I ended up quite liking physics by the end, but I'd have this kind of stuffy double physics lesson, and then an instant track session, like literally going straight from the lab onto the track, which was in our school grounds. And that was just so grim, doing like every week.
Gosh.
Yeah, I think it's like there's a bit more kind of not downtime, definitely not downtime. It's very intense, but just a bit more kind of, it's less stop and start. It's less abrupt, less jarring here, because you kind of have a little bit more time to go from one place to another.
Yeah. And in terms of, mentioned they're going straight onto the track. So going back a bit maybe to your, journey to where you are now with running, did you then train at school, or what was the setup like?
The track was in our school grounds, but I lived very close to there. So there was, it's just that we had, the running there isn't fantastic. There's kind of one field, one nature reserve, but it does what it needs to do. And about one long run route. So looking forward to going back for the long summer holiday.
Yeah.
No, but Cambridge, to be fair, I've found the routes here are so good. So it's nice to have a change, and it will be nice, I suppose, to go back. I'm not the greatest fan of Salisbury, I have to be honest.
Oh yeah, that was the nerve agent poisoning place,
yes,
wasn't it?
Yeah. I offer everybody I know that comes and visits, if they want the Novichok tour, like that's the bench, that's the hospital, but sadly I haven't been taken up on it. Wonder why.
Yes, strange things. Well, maybe a predictable long run route will, help contradict some of the potential surprises that could be there. Okay, and so, again, carrying on with perhaps A levels, there's quite a few younger listeners in particular. What was your experience like of coping with A levels and running? And I mean, you got your first GB vest in 2021, which for you was, during your A levels.
I think it is like in terms of balancing A levels and running, and I'll go A levels because that's kind of like younger listeners, as you say. I mean, it is hard. Like it's kind of that's kind of just a fact of the matter. Like it's going to be tricky. It's going to be stressful, and I think you have to kind of be aware that running is like physically and mentally tiring. So you can't really sustainably expect to smash every session. I think you have to kind of think on your feet, no pun intended. That you have to kind of like devise as you go and kind of like, just be kind of cognizant of the fact that, not things won't be perfect. Then again, you do have study leave. So I found that quite nice in terms of just kind of getting a big shift of work out of the way in the morning and then kind of using the afternoon. I was with my brother. He was doing GCSEs actually at the time. So we kind of just went cycling or something, which was really nice. But I think also you've got to remember what motivates you and why you're working so hard. And I think also necessity kind of provokes efficiency. It's kind of like the 2 or 3 hour grind just before a big deadline. Like when you have to, when you know you have to, you can kind of just bash out a few hours of being productive.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, and so, you then, if we, focus a little bit more on some of your running successes as in themselves. So you got your first GB vest, great result there. But the second year, you also qualified again for GB, but you didn't actually start that race. What happened there?
I think it was about 2 days before. I felt something kind of just like unpleasant in my ankle. And I was hoping it was just something that could kind of be manipulated the day before the race or something by the physio. But it kind of got worse even as I was just walking around the airport, that kind of thing. And the day before the race, I was like, okay, this is actually like I can barely walk. And so the doctors, they were good. They were like, okay, should be fine. We'll tape it up. And then they kind of pressed on the bone to make sure it wasn't the bone. And it was some kind of stress response. Luckily, not as far as a stress fracture, but still, it was gutting. Like it was horrible. But then again, I feel like in a way you are kind of playing with fire. Like I'd had my first term of university. It'd be very intense. Right at the end of it, I tried to qualify. And I was really happy to have qualified. But like, I feel like the kind of, it had been draining and the toil had, it had taken its toll a bit. But I also think, it's really hard to know because you kind of get very frustrated. You're like, I don't know how this happened. I was so careful. But I think sometimes life just hits you with these things. And I think with a retrospective stance now, like I'm happy with how I dealt with it, how the people around me helped me to deal with it. Because in the grand scheme of things, like it hasn't shaken things up too much. Like it's pretty nominal. And I was able to bounce back towards the end of the cross country season, which I'm very grateful for.
Yeah, no, for sure. And yeah, you definitely did. And so, that coincided with the first year of uni. And you mentioned how, you'd done everything right to the best of your knowledge. Can you think of any ways in which perhaps the move to uni, created some specific additional stresses or anything like that?
Cambridge is weird in that we have very short, intense terms. So they're like 8 weeks.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But they kind of cram. So everything that would be crammed into like a 12-week term is instead like condensed. And we do have a lot of work. So I think partially it was the academics, but obviously also social things. So like trying to kind of frantically make friends in the first couple of weeks. And then you're like, oh, I now have like a lot of work. So I think it was just, kind of, it's quite a big shift. Yeah, I mean, I can't blame the injury on that, but I think it probably didn't help. Yeah, so you've just got to, like these things aren't bad though necessarily because they're part of the process, and like you don't want to kind of lose out on kind of big and good experiences by like trying to be very kind of small c conservative and like get sleep. And well, obviously you need to get sleep, but you can't. Yeah, I mean, it's the first term, it's going to be a bit crazy.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely accepting that, other priorities might have to take a bit of a front seat, during the first term of uni and stuff. Okay. And so in terms of, for athletes who are looking to come to uni this year, so somewhere like Cambridge, and I know it's the same for Oxford as well, it's got quite a lot of applications. Can you give a quick overview of that process and maybe the amount of time that's required?
Yeah, I mean, it's quite a lot of time. Most of sixth form for me was like extra work, not so much doing the actual syllabus stuff, because I think with a subject like English, as I've said before, it literally is just about reading, reading and reading. So from a science perspective, I assume it's similar, but I don't want to say that as a kind of certified fact. But yeah, you've basically just kind of got to, I mean, it shouldn't come too unnaturally if you genuinely love the subject. You should kind of want to learn these things and kind of foment these little areas of expertise. That's like genuinely what I enjoyed academically most about sixth form. It was kind of like doing my own thing, and like, I mean, it was all working towards the application, but also it was kind of fun in and of itself. But in terms of my actual application, I did consider running. I mean, the team is so strong here. Like, for a university that's not considered sporting, it astounds me just constantly, like how good and professional and kind of experienced everybody is. But I did a lot of kind of pro and con list making. I trolled through the admission statistics.
Nice.
I don't think I reached out to Cambridge Runs, but they reached out to me on a very memorable occasion. But yeah, I wasn't looking for a sporting university, because I am used to having a small group, just me and one other boy trained together my entire time at school. And I knew it worked for me. So yeah, I suppose I was, in that sense, I kind of was prioritizing academia over running. But generally speaking, I don't think I do. I think they can be done alongside each other.
Okay, yeah, no, that's really interesting, because I think often, you can think, oh, there's only so much, resources or so much mental capacity to focus on one thing. So that's really nice to hear that you think both can fit in together. Would you say that at times, running gets a bit more and uni gets a bit more, or do you manage to keep a quite consistent balance between the two?
I think it kind of depends on the calendar in a way. Like, they definitely oscillate. So Lent term was quite busy in terms of running, because we had Bucks and then a couple of weeks later nationals, and that meant like weekends away. But equally, this term has been very academia focused, because I tend to like race. I tend to prefer racing track a bit later, because it just takes me a bit longer to get the legs going. Like, I don't really want to be opening the season in April kind of thing. I've raced in September on the track before, so I know I have months ahead, hopefully. But yeah, I think it does oscillate in terms of the calendar, but also I don't think one has to be sacrificed for the other at any time. And I think if you feel like they do, then I don't know, I just worry that isn't necessarily striking a very fine balance, because I think you've got to prioritize time for both. Like, they complement each other. If you kind of just did 15 hours of revision with no kind of fresh air of running, you're only going to be detrimenting your kind of academic success. So yeah, I think they kind of complement each other.
Yeah, for sure. Some excellent advice there, guys. Okay, and so let's focus, mainly on uni now, that experience of, running at a higher level and at a uni level. For you, what surprised you the most about coming to uni?
I've kind of touched on this a little bit, in terms of the running club and how kind of professional and like experienced and good everybody is. Like, it's such a good club, and it genuinely astounds me. Like, we're student run, like the captains do so much work, and it's just so kind of professional, but equally like really fun, and we kind of have loads of social events. And I think so something that surprised me is kind of the sporting support that is available, even though Cambridge isn't kind of advertised as a sporting university. Like, the Cambridge University Sports Centre is really good. They have a UCAP program which provides like physio and S&C and things, which is really, really beneficial. And I'm very grateful for that, even when I'm turning up at like 8 a.m. for a watt bike session. It's still really good.
And, in terms of, you mentioned there, physio and S&C, are those things that you had access to, or particularly with the S&C, was that something you did before coming to uni?
No, not at all. It's been really good to have it here, because I feel like when you get to the age of like 18, 19, you're definitely ready to start implementing that in the training schedule. I mean, maybe not so much when you're younger, because you kind of just want to be focusing on the running and the enjoyment, but definitely when it steps up, the distances start increasing, things like that, it becomes important. But yeah, so one thing that I suppose surprised me is the running club, and like how everyone's juggling degrees, but they're still managing to organize this team of 60 odd people, getting on a coach, going to Bucks. It's crazy. And like how they've tried to make the club inclusive and fun and things, but also kind of generally, I know people had kind of told me that Cambridge was this bubble and it was very intense and like you get tired and you get ill, but like it definitely surprises me still. Like I get to the end of a term and we have all these weird like words and names for things and these traditions, and I'll just be like rabbiting on to my parents and my family, like telling them what I've been up to, and they're literally just, they don't understand what I'm saying. They're like, wait, we literally don't know any of this, like, because it's just inside jokes and weird words, and like, yeah, it's very intense. It very much is a bubble, and like you kind of don't really get much of the outside world when you're here, because I mean my news is basically sourced from the like Facebook confession pages, so it's not ideal.
Yeah, no, uni can be like that, and I can definitely see, you know, where somewhere as, I guess, prestigious and also for campus unis in general, they really can be bubbles. Have you got any examples of something which is, you know, very insider Cambridge?
Oh, there's so much. I might need to have a bit of time. I suppose we have formals and gowns. That's quite a quintessential Cambridge thing. So you'll just, you know, you just kind of, to be fair, I still don't get used to it. Like seeing someone with a gown flapping along behind them walking down the road, like I still find it quite funny. But I suppose we have that. We also kind of just have strange words like plodge, pidge, stash. All the colleges have weird names. Like we have DOSes and supervisions, and SIDGE is a place I have my lectures, and yeah, I think, and when you're kind of rattling this off to your parents, and I mean societies were even worse, like the clubs have their a whole kind of vocabulary, but yeah, it just, you realize that like you've been a bit kind of single track minded for the last 8 weeks, and it's time to like put it to the side.
Yeah, oh well, maybe just as well for the, you know, short and intense terms then.
Yeah.
And to give people an idea, maybe a bit of insight into, you know, your life at uni and as a runner, can you walk us through maybe a typical day or a typical week?
Okay, so with English, I tend to have 2 lectures a day. Lots of English students don't go to them, but I do. But then again, I've been told I'm not much of an English student, like personality-wise, which is fair enough.
What makes you say that?
I don't know. It's not really a subject that's very congruous with doing sport generally.
True.
Like they're quite chill, like they float around, like they're quite cool.
Yeah.
So yeah. Yeah, so I have normally 2 lectures a day. And then in a week, I'll also have 2 supervisions at some point, because we have our course is like split in 2. So we've got like the chronology. So we do medieval, Renaissance, Shakespeare, something like that. And then the other side is kind of practical criticism. So like Foucault, Derrida, all of that kind of stuff. So we'll have 1 supervision for each, which is a very small class with a supervisor who's normally a PhD student.
Okay.
And then running wise, we have sessions normally Tuesday and Saturday, long run on Sunday. And then the other days I'll squeeze in what I can do, go to the gym, either go on the watt bike, things like that. Sometimes swim. We have a nice Lido at Jesus Green, which I like doing open water swimming in. And yeah, I suppose basically the rest of your day is like doing kind of supervision work, doing your extra reading. Sometimes lectures will give you kind of pre-reading. Occasionally the faculty will hold classes, which you have to do preparatory work for. But yeah, the whole week kind of gears up towards your supervision essay or essays, which are normally like 1,000, 2,000 words. No, 1,500, 2,000 words. So you've got to do all the reading for that. Yeah, and then there are social things as well. Like you'll have I'm trying to go through all the colleges to do a formal, which is going okay. But yeah, so you might have one of them. And also the running club often organises social events, and you kind of, yeah, there is definitely time. I think there's a bit of a stigma like that no one actually goes out at all in Cambridge, but we do. We can have a fun time. It's just a bit limited.
Yeah, no, and rightly so. And so you mentioned there, you know, some time on the watt bike, you know, a bit of swimming. Is cross training something that features strongly? Yep. Okay. And is that a new thing?
Yeah. It didn't used to be so much, but a combination of things kind of like led to this. So obviously the injury I got over Christmas, I think that was kind of the final straw. I was like, well, I'm doing something wrong here, so I've got to make a change. And also what's really good about the running club is that we've got older athletes. Like some of the girls I train with, they're so like mature about things. Like they've just done it for so long and they know what to do, and they do a lot of cross training. So I kind of took a leaf out of their book, talked to the coach, and we were like, okay, we're just going to sub a couple of runs in for watt bikes and swims, which I think has really helped. It just kind of, you just feel a lot less fragile. But also I think because I had this kind of really frustrating chain of injuries over the lockdown, I didn't really do much to change my behavior, because I didn't have the facilities available to me. So it would have literally just been, okay, don't run, but don't do anything. And so I wasn't just going to kind of cut out like runs. But now I'm here, like, it kind of just, the option opened, so I took it.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And there's a couple of things I want to follow up on here. So firstly, the string of injuries that you had during lockdown. Can you take us through, what the situation was there?
Yeah, so I think the week after English schools, the lockdown kind of regulations came into place. So I didn't really ever have either the kind of closure or celebration or downtime that I needed after what had been like a very fun, very busy cross-country season.
Yeah, because you won a lot of titles that year, including the English schools.
Yeah, so that wasn't ideal for a start. And yeah, I think everyone got a bit excited. I got very overzealous in the start of the lockdown because I was like, there's nothing else to do other than run. My GCSEs had been cancelled. So I didn't have much sense of purpose. I was kind of trying to start thinking about applying to Cambridge, but equally I was only like 16. So it was a bit of a way off. And also it was very hard to motivate yourself when it's sunny outside. So I think, I just kind of, I didn't overdo it massively, but I just ran probably too many days a week, and didn't really I didn't have anything else to kind of keep me occupied. So it was just very much, I was thinking about running. I was watching a lot of YouTube, running videos, like, because everyone was, everyone was in the same boat here. But I think, people saw it as a chance to get fit, and so did I, but I didn't need that. I needed a bit of downtime. And then also, obviously, there was like limited healthcare, and a big backlog. So I didn't get to see a physio for like 9-10 months. And I kind of just had like 8-9 months of on and off injuries, just kind of repeating, which was very frustrating, especially when you're not having any races lined up. It was just kind of a bit constant, and it felt, it was pretty, draining.
Yeah. Okay. And it was a hard time. And in terms of running, I think a lot of people just, there wasn't much to do. There wasn't much support around. And so, no, but it's good to hear that you've kind of managed to come away from that now and getting some changes implemented. And earlier you also mentioned, some of the more mature girls. I sense maybe, is there anything in particular that you've picked up from them, or was there something that really stood out to you that you've kind of taken away from them?
I think something, well, as a running club collectively, we talk about Red S quite a lot. Red S, whatever you say. And they have a lot of wisdom about that. And that, as I've said, the welfare officers are so good. Like, we get like a lovely little email every week that just kind of reminds us about how to take care of ourselves, which is so nice. But so I suppose we've discussed that quite a lot, and also with the coach, which is good that we can have these conversations. But also I think a lot of them have experienced like what's quite common for like girl runners is like having several years of like a plateau, even though you're training. And it's so frustrating because boys don't often have like a kind of equivalent, but kind of just hearing their experiences of it is just really interesting, and also kind of just reassuring, because like they have, they've been through what me and the kind of other young runners are going through now in terms of trying to juggle an undergraduate degree with running, and they just have a lot of advice. And it's really nice that we all train together as well, because they could just kind of go off and do their own thing, but instead they choose to train with us all, and it means the club is very inclusive and friendly.
Yeah, no, that's definitely so important. And, having that social aspect, it's so key. Okay, so let's unpack a few things here. So to start with, you mentioned Red S and plateauing. Have you personally suffered with either of those?
Plateauing a little bit, but that was kind of brought on by the lockdown in terms of there just not being enough races.
Okay.
So it's kind of hard to know. And also, like, if a plateau is to do with an injury, is it really a plateau, or is it kind of an injury, so, but I think, in terms of having a chain of injuries, that was unfortunate and like frustrating. So I suppose that kind of counts. Red S wise, not so much, but possibly I would have had I not known more about it. I think the kind of crucial time, when you're kind of 15, 16, that tends to be like quite a common age. I think that was when I first heard people talking about it, and I did the mini marathon camps at Birmingham and St Mary's, and they had kind of really interesting talks, very informative. Like, I think we had a couple of lectures and things on it, so I was aware of it. But it's is really not a nice thing. So it's really good that people are talking about it more, and also crucially that it can affect boys as well as girls.
Yeah, no, yeah, definitely. All excellent points there. And no, that's really great to hear. The plateauing in particular is, I think, very interesting because that's not so commonly spoken about, but definitely is something that does affect a lot of people. Okay, so it sounds like, you've got a good setup at uni. What's this year been like so far, in terms of competitions? You recently went to America for a competition, is that right? Can you tell us about that experience?
Yeah, that was really cool. It was the combined Oxford and Cambridge athletics team called the Achilles Club. And I think they've been doing it for a very long time. I think there was a period where like these men would go over on this boat and they'd be running laps of the boat to try to keep training, to go to America. So it's a really cool tradition. It's not like the most primed trip for performance, because you're sleeping on the floors of like Harvard, Yale, Cornell, and Penn students. So I think, for people who were very unlucky, they had to sleep on a beanbag for like 3 nights. But it was so cool to kind of see like what the students' life there is like and everything. So yeah, that was kind of, I didn't run very well. It wasn't really a season opened, but it was just something. It was kind of like a fun cultural trip.
No, that sounds really cool. And you mentioned there getting around, Harvard, Yale, Penn, etc. Did you pick up on any kind of key differences between maybe your uni experience and some of their uni experiences?
Yeah, it is very different. And I've never been to America, so generally the whole culture and climate was very different. But I think in terms of the university experiences, they get a lot of funding and facilities. Like I think you could probably host an Olympic Games in Harvard, to be honest. It's amazing. Like it did blow me away a bit. And also we have like British athletes that go there. So, it's not even that far from home. But yeah, they have very big athletics clubs. Like it's all very, it kind of seemed, I was surprised by how kind of friendly it was, because you get the impression that they're very intimidating and daunting, but we were just kind of allowed to train alongside them for the most part, which was really nice. Yeah, so I think facilities wise, funding wise, that was quite a big difference. Also just kind of the whole American like college life. There were times when I was like, this is literally like a film. I think in Philadelphia, Penn University, I mean, there were just frat parties going on, and it was great. It was really exciting, but it is different. They kind of have like barbecues and things. Well, we do very different things. And yeah, I think Cornell was probably the epitome of the America college life, because we all went to this big like river dam, and everyone was kind of sitting there, like a huge amount of people jumping off into this kind of big lagoon. It was really cool, but yeah, very different.
No, that's really cool to hear. And would going to America potentially for even running purposes be something that's a possibility for you in the future?
I didn't really think about it for undergrad because I was very set on Cambridge from quite a young age. Well, relatively young age, like once I had it in my head, I was just like, right, that's it. But I suppose potentially for a PhD or something. But I also am quite keen to stay here because I do love the setup. I love Cambridge. I feel like I'm not going to get bored of it either. Like I am, I would just be happy to stay here for a very long time, which is good because that is the running tradition. The Harrys do tend to just stay here for like 10 years. So I'll probably be one of them.
Wow, well, we'll catch up with you when you've got, a few PhDs down the line. Okay.
Yeah, literally.
And you also mentioned there, being set on Cambridge from quite a young age. Was there anything that inspired that in particular?
I think it's a mixture of things. My mum went to Cambridge, so I suppose there was that. And I think actually my grandfather had as well, and he got a cross-country blue, weirdly enough, even though like running wasn't particularly in our family. So it was just yeah, I suppose also I think watching Harry Potter probably did something because like you see, a lot of it was filmed in the Oxford or Cambridge, and I was just kind of like, oh, cool, gowns like Hogwarts, the kind of quintessential stereotype. But yeah, I think academically it was just very appealing.
Yeah.
And also, yeah, I like the look of the running. It was just a mixture of things like that.
Yeah, no, that all makes sense. And, we'll be sure to thank J.K. Rowling for any extra inspiration there. Okay, and you mentioned there with your granddad getting a Cambridge Blue. Can you explain what that is?
Yeah, sorry. This is an example of the whole lingo thing. But yeah, it's basically a sporting kind of, a kind of recognition of sporting success. I think it's only available in like 12 sports because it's quite a traditional thing. And it basically manifests itself in a blues blazer, which is kind of this turquoisey jacket that you can pretty much only wear at like 3 events a year. So you've got to try to get your money's worth when you're buying that.
Oh yeah.
But it's, yeah, you can get a half blue as well in some sports. But yeah, it's essentially just kind of the mark of kind of being talented at sport, but also it's connected to the varsity kind of match in terms of sport. So that's Cambridge versus Oxford. So if you're a blues runner, for example, you're kind of among the best runners, and you race the Oxford Blues runners in a kind of blues match, and they're taken very seriously. Like, varsity is what everyone gears up to in Michaelmas term, which is the first term.
Okay, and are you a blue yourself?
Yes, I am. Although I wasn't actually for cross country, because varsity fell in between the European qualifier and Europeans, and you're not allowed to race then. So technically, I'm still to get my cross country blue, but I am for the track, for the athletics.
Oh, cool. Well, it saves something for the future. And speaking of the future, have you got any key races or goals in mind for the upcoming, or I guess partially underway season?
Yeah, I think I'm doing the England under 23 champs. I'm going to try a 5K, cool. But I'm a bit unlucky with my birthday in that I'm in the year where you're kind of like, you miss a year of under 20, even though you technically are still under 20. So right. It's kind of just going to be a race for experience, just see what a 5K is like more. And then it will be pretty much open meets and like BMCs for the rest of the season. I think I'm going to try to get the times down.
Yeah, that makes sense. Any distance in particular?
I think it will be a bit of a range, probably 15s and 3s.
Yeah. Oh no, that's really cool. And are you looking forward to doing a 5,000 on track?
Yeah, I am. I mean, I tried one in America, but again, that was at the end of 2 weeks sleeping on floors, so that was very much not optimal. But yeah, it'll be good to try to do a faster one.
Yeah, for sure. No, well, the very best of luck with that. And
thank you.
I guess we're coming to the end of our time now, so some wrap-up questions. What is your favourite running memory of uni so far?
I think probably Bucks, followed by Nationals in a close second, because technically Nationals wasn't a Cambridge running thing, but it was very fun. But yeah, Bucks was brilliant. It was like, 3-day weekend. We never kind of had, everyone says it's like the grown-up English schools, but like it's really, really fun. So yeah, definitely Bucks.
Yeah, okay, awesome. And number one piece of advice for anyone applying to OxBridge?
Just read a lot. I think that pretty much goes for any subject you're doing. Yeah, and also try to as I said earlier, create a little expert area where you can kind of impress in an interview.
Yeah. Key advice there if you are applying. Okay. Mm-hmm. Unsurprising or unexpected hobby or talent?
I can do a headstand for as long as I want, but I choose not to because it hurts my head. I can play violin and piano. Yeah.
Nice. Well, if you need to be upside down for any time, you'll be fine. So that's cool. Yeah. Okay, favorite training session?
Either hills or kilometer reps, but probably hills. Like if I could only ever do one session for the rest of my life, it would be hills, because then I could just go to a mountain and run up and down it.
Have you tried mountain running yet?
I actually, because we go to Scotland and the lakes quite a lot for family holidays, and I will one day try to do a fell race. I promise some people that I will, so it's definitely on the cards.
It sounds like it could be the perfect combo for you.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh no, that would be awesome. Okay, and you also have your own blog, that is right? Is that right?
Yes, I do. Yes, it's so popular with some of my fellow Cambridge runners that I believe they have, articles screenshot on their camera rolls. So yes, there are some interesting articles coming up as well, I should say.
Okay.
I'm thinking of doing a to pause or not to pause, the do's and don'ts of watch stoppage. So. Because I'm quite renowned for constantly pausing the watch. Yeah, but no, cool. Yeah, shout out to the blog.
Yeah, and where can people find that if they're keen to get a bit more insight into your content?
even more content. It's in my Instagram bio. So.
Okay, and your Instagram is?
Bea Wood _ BEAWWD.
Cool. Okay, well, thank you so much for coming on. It's been great talking to you.
Thank you very much for having me.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
So that's it for today. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, be sure to rate, subscribe, and leave a review. This really helps to get the content out there. I'm new to this, guys, and I want to make this podcast the best possible for you. So go follow Fitter, Faster, Happier on Instagram. That's Fitter, Faster, Happier. To leave your questions, comments and feedback, and for updates and guest requests. All the best for the week ahead, guys. Run happy, live happy, be happy.